bidirectional communication between scientists and people from different sections of the society is one of the mandate of MoES. So as a part of this, today we are having an informal discussion where we are planning to understand a complex problem which our humanity is facing, that is climate change. So a few words about this program, today's program. Today's program is divided into three sections. First, the resource person, Professor Shailesh Nayak, will introduce the topic. Then we will take the questions from the audience. Then we have got a lot of questions from the people who are not able to participate in the meeting. So they have mailed the questions. We will discuss that question after that. So now let me introduce today's resource person, Professor Shailesh Nayak. So a brief CV I will present in front of you. Dr. Nayak is currently Director, National Institute of Advanced Studies and Distinguished Scientist in the Ministry of Earth Science. He was the Chair, Earth System Science Organization, known as ESSO, and Secretary to the Government of India for Ministry of Earth Science between 2008 to 2015. He provided leadership for programs related to science of climate change, weather services, polar sciences, geosciences, ocean science, and modeling, ocean survey, resources, and technology. Dr. Nayak was mainly responsible for conceptualizing, formulating, and executing many national level projects related to application of satellite data on ocean color, integrated coastal zone management, snow and glacier studies, and water resources, and developed potential fishing zone services. So, Dr. Nayak joined the Space Application Center, ISRO, in 1978 as a scientist, and subsequently elevated as the Director of Marine and Water Resources. And Dr. Nayak was appointed as the Director, Indian National Center for Ocean Information Services, known as INCOIS, Hyderabad, where he set up a state-of-the-art early warning system for tsunami and storm surges in Indian Ocean. He was also responsible for conceptualization and development of Marine GIS. So along with this, there are so many other accolades to him. I'm not reading all of that. Dr. Nayak has published about 150 papers in peer-reviewed journals and delivered about 190 invited talks in national and international conferences. And most importantly, he has produced 11 PhDs. And my personal information is he is one of the very patient teacher. You can go to him and learn a lot. I'm telling it because we got message that many school children are also participating in this event, so they can ask a question to sir directly. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Vinay, for very generous introduction, and good afternoon to everybody. It's really a pleasure to interact with you all, and what I'm going to do is just introduce a subject and throw upon some of the major issues which we need to address. And then we will have more discussion on this topic. So I'm not planning to take more than 20-25 minutes to have some idea that what is happening around. Now, the main thing in the Earth system, what we realize that the Earth is a single and self-regulating system which has 5 major components: the atmosphere, the hydrosphere or ocean, the biosphere, the geosphere, and snow and ice or the cryosphere. And there is large amount of energy and mass transfer between these components of the Earth as well as within each component. Now, all this actually builds a specific climate for a specific region. Now, what we have found in last 2 centuries that our activities have disturbed this system, and this we learned from the various observations over a large period of time, which might have been made from the ground, and last 50 years or so, mostly from the satellite. So based on that, we know that the Earth is warming up and there are many changes which are occurring. Now, there is also a changes. One is a change, but there is also a large amount of variability. And I won't go into too much detail, but we know that the current period as what we saw as a Holocene or last 11,000 years, the climate was more or less stable. That's what we say about 15 degree, and which allowed the civilization to flourish. And during this period also, there were changes which we call as a variability, which is happened when the beginning of the Holocene around 10,000 years ago, where there was in India, there was an intensification of the monsoon. Of course, there were some dry spell, but the current monsoon season really started at that time. And also during the mid-Holocene, there were a lot of cold and arid climate, and we had a large amount of drought. Many of you might be following recently the Meghalayan age, where they found the evidence in the caves of Meghalaya that there was a very intense cold period in 2250 years before Common Era, and that lasted almost 200 years, and which allowed many civilizations to vanish, especially like Harappan, and that is the one major thing. So that means the climate can disrupt the civilization. If we come much closer during the medieval warming, around 1400 years or so, there were both, we have seen that there were mega droughts and the monsoons. And the world over, the Mayan civilization collapsed around 900 years before Common Era, essentially because of large-scale massive deforestation. So things have been changing, and then very recently the Little Ice Age between 15th to 18th century, especially in Europe, which led to most of the expeditions outside the Europe came during this period because there were a lot of issues about food and all, and people started migrating outside. So the climate does affect us, and over a period of time we have seen that this. So currently what is going to happen, we get a fairly good idea about what happened in the past. Now, this is what we call as essentially happened because of the variability, because the anthropogenic activity was not that enough, which could have actually affected the climate overall. Now, we will see now what is happening in India over a period of time. We know that the temperature has been increasing, and it has increased about 0.6 degree, and the decadal increase after 1980s about 0.2 degrees. You can see very sharp rise after 1980 that the slope has drastically changed and it has moved upwards. There were many warm year and all, but you can see that there are some areas, especially part of Rajasthan and part of Bihar, which shows some cooling as well. Now, this all of you would have experienced that the warm nights have increased and the cold nights have decreased as over a period of time. So this is, and similarly, the hot days and cold days also have drastically changed, and many will come back to that, how the hot days is affecting individuals. The sea level also has changed both in Indian Ocean, North Indian Ocean, as well as Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal. Everywhere it shows that the sea level has changed, and especially after 2003, it shows much faster increase. The sea surface temperature also has increasing like the atmosphere temperature, and this is also around 0.2 degree per decade it is increasing. And because of the increase in the temperature, we have seen that the glaciers have started melting. The rate of melting or the retreat of the glacier is quite different. It varies from 1 meter to 60 meter per year. So there is a large variation, but the overall loss in the Indian Himalayas is about 16%, and in the Chinese Himalayas is also more or less 16%. So the computation of a loss of a glacier area is fairly good. Also, but the things are not uniform. In the Western Himalayas is retreating slowly, which is mostly based on the snow, while the monsoon-dominated central and the eastern Himalayas are retreating at much faster rates. Now, apart from this, there is a lot of ice sheets, especially in Ladakh and Bhutan and the Tibet side, and we are losing about 4 billion tons of ice annually. So this is a huge loss which is already happening. We do not know how much snow cover has reduced or how much precipitation as a snow has reduced, but in Bhutan, it shows that about 3% decrease in the snow. Now, where the Indus Basin, which is mainly dependent, like Satluj, Beas, Ravi, Jhelum, all those rivers, which receives their most of the water from the snowfall. So there we think that the situation is going to be very difficult because most of the food which we produce in India, also in Pakistan, depends on the water which is available from the Indus Basin. So there is going to be an issue on this. But there are different opinions. There are some studies which says that the water going to decrease, but there are also studies with an equally good argument that there could be more floods also in the Indus, Ganges and Brahmaputra. We'll see a couple of the impacts on cyclones. The cyclones have increased, but is actually number of cyclones have not increased, but the intensity or the stronger cyclones have increased. That means once the formation of depression start, there are more chances of them converting into a strong storm is increasing. And we have seen 2 to 3 cyclones now every year. We also have seen, especially after 1985, that those who were from Kerala or Karnataka would know that the sardine and mackerel, which is the main fish on Kerala and Karnataka, the catch has reduced after 1985, and the catch is increasing in Goa and Maharashtra as well as Tamil Nadu and Andhra. Now, this is a common phenomena that we have seen that the fish above the 8 degrees to 14 degrees and above, they have been migrating further northwards for the cooler regions as well as a more depth. And now the catch of sardine in Maharashtra coast is very high, but in the Kerala coast has drastically reduced. So there could be many such changes it would have happened. I'm just giving you one example of this. Now, to do this, what we need to understand for the future, that how these changes are occurring and whether we can model it. So, I won't go into the details of the model, but one of the major output of the model is that the decrease in the light rain and increase in the heavy precipitation. And we have been experiencing that the heavy rainfall or the extreme events have increased and the light rain has drastically decreased. Now, this has a lot of implications on, if you say, on the shallow groundwater table, which is very critical because that maintains the base flow in the rivers as well as it supports the terrestrial ecosystem and crops. So any change in the shallow groundwater table can dramatically affect the availability of a water, both for human being and for the ecosystem. Now, there are we know that the sea level is going to rise. There are many cyclones, intensity is increasing. So in India, we have a very detailed analysis, which are the most vulnerable areas because of such changes. And what you can see as a red in this, they are all the vulnerable areas, which is likely to be affected more compared to which are the green areas. So very detailed analysis, very detailed maps for the entire countries are available. So we know, so this is one of the measure to address the vulnerability to the climate change. So we should not occupy those areas which are vulnerable. Now, the alone understanding the climate is not enough. We know that whatever knowledge which we have about the Earth system and the climate change is pretty good. You must be aware that IPCC 6 report, and over a period of time, our understanding about the climate change and its impact has increased drastically. Now, based on that knowledge, the social system or the various policy, the COP 25, 26, last several years, the government, heads of the government are meeting and they are trying to address what are the issues, how do we able to adapt and mitigate these kind of changes. I won't go into the details of that, but this process is on. We may say that the process is not good enough or not adequate enough to address the issue is a different issue, but the system about this is going to place, and there are many policy related decisions are also taken by the government. In India also we had a climate action plan and many other things to address the climate change. But the main issue also is, even if these two are done, the human system, the behavior of the humans is also very critical. And I very much happy, Binoy, and extremely grateful to you to focus on this issue, because we normally think that what I can do, and this is where I think is very critical. And there are, whatever our activities, we use energy, we consume a lot of resources, we use oil, water, we travel, there are construction activities, deforestation. Many of you have raised some of these issues. So these are the activities of human, and whether there is any scope to further address by this, because the energy and the release of the greenhouse gases and the global warming, this relationship has been very clearly established. And we saw some of the impacts of our activities on this. That impact also will going to affect us in one way or the other way, either the food or water or any other issues which will come to us. Now, the more important thing is, now this is today's discussion is also that there is a lot of concern about the climate change and variability, and public is quite conscious and they would like to have a dialogue. This is one thing which we have initiated. Now, how we can provide information to the people, that is the most important. And what kind of a climate information is required to be. Now, why this is important? Because the impact of the climate or understanding of the impact is very critical. And this we need to understand not only on the human health, but also the ecosystem, the economic system, the built environment, and many other things. Because ultimately, if our ecosystems are degrading, then we may not get a lot of ecosystem services on which we depend. So, and that will in turn affect the economic systems. Like if you have a cyclone, then there could be an impact on the economic activity, at least for a few days, or we lose some of the infrastructure. So all this, we need to understand how the climate is going to impact the variety of things. Now, the second, which is most important thing when we want to, what we know today about the climate variability change is much at a global or at the most at the regional level. We do not know how the climate is changing at a local level, because the data which is available at the local level is not good enough for, or data is not available for to make this assessment. So what we need is whether we can improve the existing models and understand that what is going to happen at the local level. Because unless and until we know that what is likely impact at the local level, we may not be able to address at the level of us, I mean the individual or community level. The second is, once we know that, we need to build a lot of climate services. Now, what information I will give you one example later. So we need this kind of a services so that we can get whatever action which we need to take to prevent any impact on individuals or on a community. Now, as far as the mitigation is concerned, the most important thing, what are the options we have to reduce the carbon dioxide? This is the most critical. There may be many other things, but we will focus on this, how we can reduce the emission of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. There are many other causes also, land use changes, the methane and many other, but I think we need to concentrate on greenhouse gases. Then the last point is, what is our ability to adapt? Now, how do we know that this community is able to adapt and this community needs further support? Now, that kind of studies are very critical to understand that how the communities will adapt to this. There is also another term which is being used is auto-adaptation. That means we adapt to a situation without even realizing it. And this is an area which we need a lot of further understanding in the research. Also, we need to understand how the environment, the political thought, the social aspect and economic aspect are interacting with each other, which is a very difficult to model, but that is an area which we need to address. Now, these are not the exhaustive list of the services, but I thought these are some of the we can relate ourselves directly. So one is the human health and the impact of heat and cold waves. Now, when the heat wave is likely to come, whether we have an early warning system by which we can address this issue, or either a cold wave. Now, in some of the cities, there may be many cities, but I know in Ahmedabad, this is a corporation provides a warning that heat wave is coming and what you should be doing. You should not go out, drink more water, and there is a large amount of instruction what you should be doing. Now, this kind of an early warning system would be very much required at a local level, because these heat waves do not cover large area. They cover fairly large area, but not necessarily entire India at a time or entire state at a time. It would be focused on a local regions. There could be some regions could be food and water shortages where the stream flow and the rainfall reduces. There could be water shortage which can convert into a food shortage locally. But whether, so that has to come from outside. If the population is increasing continuously, and then there would be definitely, because the water is, whatever water is coming as a monsoon is more or less constant. It's not going to change drastically. The variation is between, if it is low, it will become about 85%. If it is very high, it becomes 110%. But its impact can be very high. And if the population increases, same amount of water has to be shared by more and more people. So this is the another area. So we need to know where there could be a likely water shortages in advance. So this is one which we need to build. Also, similarly, drought, where we know that once the rainfall is less, but there could be irrigation facility available, so the impact could be less because the irrigation, that water which is coming may be coming from quite a distance. So this importance is that how this availability of a water or a food or a moisture during drought time, this information, actually in India now we are providing drought related information, but what is not done is the integration of a socio-economic conditions, because that is where how they would be able to respond, which would be known. See, if you see after we got an independence, and especially after 1956, we never had a famine because of the government action and the information which is available. We may have droughts, but never a famine. So this kind of information now we need further integrate the socio-economic data to make it more robust. The sea level rise, as I told you, that some of the vulnerability, low-lying areas will have a problem. The coastal erosion may increase, the salinity in groundwater can increase, and all the three can affect the individually. So we should know that which are the vulnerable areas and where the likely flooding is going to take place. Now in agriculture, of course, this is the most critical and very important part, that the seasonal temperature is increasing, that we know, and which could change how the crop matures. It may shorten its duration. So you may have to harvest the crop much earlier. There could be droughts, flooding, which also will affect the agriculture. Also, the increase in carbon dioxide can also increase some of the productivity of some of the crops. But some of the C4 type of crops like maize, sorghum, millet, sugarcane may reduce the productivity. So this area is still we need to understand. So we need a reliable seasonal forecast. That means that what is a seasonal monsoon? You may be aware that we are spending a lot of effort to improve our seasonal monsoon forecast. And now it is much better than what it used to be. It's still about 70% accurate. It's not about 100. It will never reach to 100, but even if we could reach about 85%, that is what would be very useful. Because based on the seasonal forecast of monsoon, we would be able to forecast seasonal food production, and also the whatever moisture remains, which will tell us about the Rabi forecast. And for a short duration, for a week or two, we have introduced the agro-meteorological advisories, which will tell that how you should take the various agriculture practices depending upon kind of a rainfall, temperature, wind, cloudiness, etc. Now, some of the policies and measures, what I would like to say, the mitigation, of course, different people define quite differently, but I would like to interpret as how we respond, individual and communities, to the negative impacts of the climate change. What we need to do to change that. Now, the second issue is, there is no doubt that we need to stabilize the global climate. We can't allow it to go the way it has been going, and many things are not known. You know, there are studies which says that if you cross a threshold, then there could be a catastrophe. You know, till that, so that is what they have said, that if we can maintain below 2 degrees centigrade and probably 1.5 degrees centigrade, then we can avoid the catastrophe. So this is very critical. That means we need to stabilize. We can't go as business as usual in future. Now, there is another also, that there is no nation on the world which is developed economically without increasing in use of energy resource. Like if you say US, it uses almost 20 times more energy than what we have been using in India. So there is an unequal distribution of the resource and the consumption, basically not resource, but the consumption of the energy is quite different. So, and if you are not economically developed, you may not be able to respond to a change because you do not have the ability to respond. So these are the issues which needs a very careful consideration. And but the four major issues are very clear. To address or to stabilize the global climate, we need to reduce the energy use. We need to improve the energy efficiency. Now, you know, most of us use the LED bulb, which is almost 70–80% less energy than what we used to consume earlier. So there could be many such innovations required to improve the energy efficiency. Increasing use of renewable. Of course, renewable also would have its own carbon footprint, but we have to see that we use less use of fossil fuel and more use of the renewable, and how best we can sequester the carbon dioxide to various things. So these are the four major areas which we need to address. And the government has also many measures. I have not listed all of them, but like agriculture, so we have the insurance scheme. There could be drought or any other issues. So there is a National Rural Employment Guarantee, NREGA, what we call popularly. For the coastal, we have a coastal regulation zone. For last 30 years, it is in. And today we have the maps for the entire country that what kind of coastal zone planning should be done depending upon the various factors, which is, so we have already said, but there are maybe sometime opposition to this law, that why such laws are coming. My house is right on the coast, where I should go. So there are very legitimate issues as well. Participatory forest management. So there are many such measures which government has addressed, which directly, indirectly will address some of the mitigation related issues. And lastly, the action which is required to be taken, the one which is very important is that we need to strengthen our observation, for which will improve our understanding and which will have a better models and outputs which we can tell us that what is going to happen at the local level. This is the one which is very important. The second is we need to have our strategy that how we can reduce the risk, how our hydrological and ecological system do not get too much affected by the climate change, because ultimately all our existence depends on the hydrology and ecological system. So that is the another thing. And third is the projections which we have, or either on the drought or a sea level rise or warming, how we can translate it into a policy directions, both for individual, for communities, for local bodies, for state government, for the national government, so that we can have a clear strengthening our response to the climate change. So thank you very much. I will end here, and it is my pleasure to interact with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for giving us a clear picture of the influence of climate change on our life. Now the floor is open. Please introduce yourself before asking the question.
Binoy, may I?
Yes. Yeah, please raise your hand. Those who want to ask the question, please raise your hands so that it is easy.
Yes, I cannot find that option here. I don't know where it has it vanished. If you allow, so if you allow me, then I will go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yes, sir, very pertinent and excellent talk. And when you were talking about energy efficiency and this renewable energy, I was just remembering what assessment we did recently with IDLE project, etc. So more importantly, I was worried about one thing. You talked about air, which is the carbon dioxide and GHG emission. You talked about the water, and overall, through interaction between these two, we have the temperature rise. Now, if you think of a common person who is using, like who is actually a party to air and also a party to usage of water, so what should he preserve with higher priority? Like we should more focus on first the wetlands, etc. in near our habitat, then we will look for this emission part, or the other way around. Like there has to be a priority in mind for common citizen for having the practice.
No, I think it is not that either or. Um, in my view, we need to reduce the emission. At the same time, the wetlands has to be preserved uh, because of two reasons. Because they also help us to maintain the shallow groundwater table. And as I told you that the ecosystem as well as the availability of water in the stream flow in the rivers, it depends on this. So we need to both, because it is not that if we can preserve the wetland, we can emit whatever it is. I don't think so. Both are completely two different issues, and I think we have to address both.
Okay.
Hiba, please introduce yourself.
Good evening, sir. I am Hibayan from 8th standard and I am coming from KPM Model School, Mayanad, Kollam. And my question is, sir, now the latest news report says that Mumbai's climate change is stretching Mumbai to its limit, and Mumbai face the both combined threat of rising sea levels and extreme weather events like flooding, landslides, etc. And the city also receives an average of about 94 inches of rain annually. So what can we do to protect the city?
Yeah, if I have understood correctly, Hiba, and thank you very much for joining. You are asking that because of the extreme event, like heavy rainfall and all, the landslide can increase, right? And what we need to do to protect. Is it correct?
What we need to do to protect the Mumbai, the city?
Yeah. So there are two things which is happening. One, of course, the extreme rain, heavy rainfall has started inducing the landslides. There are two issues, because once, because of the shortage of the space in Mumbai, people also occupy very dangerous areas, like very steep slopes, and you can see that they have constructed their house. So that is a vulnerable. So one, of course, as far as possible, it should not be done. But wherever it is done, there has to be measures, engineering measures has to be taken to stabilize those slopes. And that is possible. In most cases, by engineering solutions are available by which we can stabilize this. The second, which we can do is, we also need to build a predictive models where we could say that if the rainfall of this intensity falls within an hour or so, then we should be able to issue warning, and people who are in such a vulnerable position should be evacuated. What we do during the cyclone, we know that cyclone is coming and we evacuate people for a day or 2 or 3 days to a safe place so that they are protected. So similar warning, so early warning system for the landslide in those areas where the human population is very high has to be done. Is it you are satisfied or you have anything further to ask?
Sir, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Eva. Thank you.
Sir, let me ask you one more question.
Yeah.
Sir, how can we replace carbon fuels with clean energy? Can we replace carbon fuels with clean energy?
See what we can do is now we are trying to have more and more clean energy, but it will not happen overnight. You know, we need a transition from a fossil fuel based energy, either coal or a petroleum, to the renewable. Because renewable has certain drawbacks because it can produce whenever, like solar will be able to produce from morning to evening, and evening when you need most, the solar is not there. Of course, there is another concept which is now being promoted by India that you can have the grid all over the world. So somewhere there will be always a sun, so everybody will get the power. But it may take its own time. We are also seeing that how we can produce green hydrogen. We have to promote the nuclear. But even then, even if we all our computation says that even by 2030, we would be depending on fossil fuel based energy for our requirement. Because our requirement is also growing, our population is growing. So that is, and we expect that by 2070 only, we would be able to have a zero, net zero, what is being said. So it is going to take long time for us to do that. There is another question on this, that if you take last 200 years of the total carbon space which was available to everyone, now the developed nations have almost used their quota. That means, like US has said that they will become net zero by 2050. Actually, the amount of space which they have used, carbon space, is they should be net zero by 2025. Europe should be net zero by 2034. But they are postponing that decision and putting pressure on India and other countries that you should become net zero along with us. So that is not possible because we have seen that the energy use and development are directly related. And if we can't develop, we won't be able to address some of this kind of changes. You have seen that during COVID times, since India has done considerable work in the pharmaceuticals, and we could develop our own vaccine, and today almost 175 crore doses has been administered. It has not happened in many other countries. So if we are not developed, and we have seen during vaccine that everybody wants to safeguard their population first, and then they want to export. So this will happen for all this. So we will have to build our own capacity to survive. So that is why also we need to develop further. Okay?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Eva.
Pradeep Kumar Jha.
Very good evening, sir. Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
Very good evening, sir, and thank you so much for organizing such a wonderful lecture, sir. I have 2-3 very small queries, sir, regarding this.
Yeah, please go ahead. We lost him, I think.
There's a connection.
Can we go to next? We'll come back to him.
Salva, please ask your question.
Hello, sir. Good evening. I'm Salva Keita, PhD scholar in environmental economics.
You are not audible.
Can you speak loudly?
Okay. Hello?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. My doubt is that still now the poor people, especially from northern parts of India, are using traditional energies like cow dung and all. So my doubt is how they can be promoted towards renewable energy.
Could you,
No, sir. Can
you repeat?
Okay, once for my list. Hello, am I audible?
Yeah.
My doubt is that still poor people are using some traditional energies like cow dung and all. So how they can be promoted towards usage of solar, renewable energies like solar, wind and all?
You are saying that poor people, how they would use energy. Is it something like that you are asking?
How they can be encouraged towards renewable energy sources?
Actually, they are using the old traditional cow dung and other things. How do we update to the
right? Yeah. No, see in India also now there is a very intense program which is going on to provide the electricity at every place. It is true that it's still in many rural areas, even in cities, the other source of energy, firewood, cow dung and all is being used as a source of energy. But I think the effort should be to go to the energy which is less polluting. Now, as far as some of this energy, the issue is not much to the climate, but also to the health per se, in the sense they create such an environment in a closed environment where the fumes and all that will have a more health related issues as well. So we need to shift to the more cleaner fuel. And I agree, if there are issues of they may not be able to afford. But you might have seen that most state governments now trying to provide the minimum amount of electricity free of cost, essentially to the poor people. So I think, of course, we can do much more, but we have to shift to the cleaner energy in coming years, and whatever effort is required by the government, I think it should happen. And I'm sure that slowly we have been shifting to more cleaner energy. We've been increasing the supply of renewable energy more and more compared to the fossil fuel. And by 2030, almost 50% of energy will come from renewable. And I can tell you that all over the world, whatever was decided in Paris COP15, each country has made certain commitments. And India is in first 10 countries who have fulfilled the commitment which they have made. Many of the developed countries, including US, Russia, China, Europe, they have not fulfilled the commitments which they have made in Paris. So we are going on a very right direction, and I'm sure that we would be able to achieve whatever we need to do to stabilize the climate in coming years.
Now we will take Pradeep Kumar's question, who lost in between. Pradeep?
Yes, thank you so much, sir. Due to some internet connection, I could not able to speak, sir. Very good evening, sir, and thank you so much for the wonderful lecture on climate change. And from such a big resource person, it is our privilege to join you, sir, and get some insights from you. Sir, actually, I'm a junior research fellow in Department of Civil Engineering, NIT, National Institute of Technology, Surathkal, Karnataka, where I was given a task to study in the coastal stretch of Karnataka. So, sir, during my study, like once in your conversation, in your lecture, sir, you told that in adaptation part. So I would like to know, sir, like whenever interacting with the communities or the fishermen and the research personnel who was engaged in climate change and mitigation and adaptation strategy, like sir, they are much aware of some of the feeling like the temperature is increasing, or like the sudden movement of air, or sudden burst of rainfall or cloud bursting or something like this. So they may not be aware of. So in that terms, or in natural terms, some of them can sense, but some of them are like not aware. So when you talk about the auto adaptation, how to sensitize the community and how to understand like how much they are aware of, how to study such thing. Can you please explain, sir?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the most important, and I told you that the understanding of the climate change at the local level is going to be a major change. And what we need to do is many more meetings of this kind to talk to village people and others. One of the suggestion which earlier I had made is that in each village or in group of village, we can have one volunteer who is a little bit knowledgeable, and he can provide the first-hand information about the climate change and its impact to the local people in their local language. And this has to be some kind of a regular dialogue between them. If some heavy event occurs, then we can explain, or Karnataka also has a large amount of landslides happening, especially during monsoon. Also the coastal erosion in many parts of the Karnataka coast. So wherever such things are happening, I think the dialogue between them, having information, reliable information to tell them that what it is going to happen. The second, which is a little bit long term, is that if we can provide the forecast at a local level, or at least at a district level, of what is likely to happen next 3 months or next 4 months, then we can provide them some kind of a advanced warning that this is what going to happen. We have to be prepared for this kind of events which are likely to take place. But this is still a little bit away. We may not be able to provide it well in advance. But now we have been able to provide such kind of a warning at least 3 to 5 days in advance. And I think that information should be used by them. Now, that is also not that simple. So that is why the one person in village or a group of village who should be able to provide various such information which is coming about weather and climate, which affects people, he should be able to translate that information into the manner in which they can understand. I think that is one which is very important thing, and no amount of information which we have about the climate change or the government policy, unless we have a system which directly interacts with the human or humanity and tell them what is going to happen. I think that, in my view, would be able to resolve some of these issues, which is what we are finding today. And you are absolutely right. It is not going to be that simple to make people aware of what is likely to happen. So the entire community has to find some ways and means, and we need certain either volunteers or maybe as a part of a gram panchayat. I mean, I'm not worried about the mechanism which we do, but I think we need a person who provides the information not only about the climate change, but lot of about the science and technology and their impact to the people. Maybe it could be some disease, or maybe the climate change, or any other such thing. Tomorrow there may be people are worried about climate change. You see about the neutrino lab, which is going to come in Tamil Nadu. There is a large amount of opposition right up to the chief minister, because if people are not want, he also can't do. We have seen about the nuclear plants. So there may be some issues which will be very genuine. I'm not saying that their concerns are not genuine, but we need a mechanism by which to interact with them on a permanent basis. What we have been trying to do is once in a month or twice in a month to talk. We are trying to create a system, but this has to be taken maybe some 5 or 1 million people we may need for the country who would be constantly interacting with the people.
Thank you, sir. I have one subsidiary question, sir. Like when you talk about...
there is one more hand raised.
Last one.
So we have to take that question.
Sir, last one, very small question.
Quickly, yeah.
Sir, when you talk about the energy efficiency, like the same thing you told US, US is using 20% more than what Indians or the semi-developed or underdeveloping countries are doing. So in that scenario, sir, should India or like we Indians should we practice the same scenario, same mistakes or same kind of like huge energy consumptions and carbon footprint the US generated? Should we practice that, or should we work smart to achieve in a more sustainable way? And one more thing, sir, like...
Absolutely right. I think I'm not saying that we need to do what USA did. What I'm saying is that our energy usage as of now per capita is 20 times less, not 20%, 20 times less. So we are not responsible for the current affair as far as the climate change and its impacts are concerned. So we should not be feeling that we are responsible. There may be some propaganda that you are using this cow dung, falana, dikna. This is all not important. The important thing is the large picture is the carbon dioxide which is in the... And even today, USA uses more coal than us. You know, it's not that they are not using. So what I am saying is we should not get into the Western propaganda. But at the same time, as I told you, that India's performance as far as the commitment to climate action is exemplary. We are the first 10 countries in the world who are following their commitments in Paris. So we are doing, and we are increasing our commitment. If you see this year in COP26, we further improved our commitments. We have not reduced the commitment. But the commitment by the developed world has not happened. So we have to also tell them that you first put your house in order, then tell us what we should do. We know what we are doing. We have been traditionally, in our houses, in your house, your mother or your wife will be always say, switch off the light when you come out of the room. Everywhere, this is a very common practice. So we are conscious. But in USA, if you go, nobody switches off anything. So they think they can afford it. So we are using it. And the kind of food wastage which happens in US is amazing. I have seen most of the time, whatever you go to restaurant, 50% of the food is wasted there. We don't waste our food. So we are very conscious about our role for maintaining the climate and protecting the earth. Then we will continue to do, we should continue to do what more we can do. But at the same time, we have to tell the developed world that you are not doing what you should be doing.
Thank you so much, sir.
Abhijit. Please ask your question.
Yes. Thank you for this opportunity. I am from Maharashtra, and I'm a postgraduate in Earth Science, Applied Geology, and currently I'm working in environment conservation with the NGO. And so my question is, sir, about the subsidies and the solar panels roof on the individuals in middle class in India. Is there any massive project upcoming as they did in the 2016 or 17, as the government of India has ordered millions of LED bulbs in a bulk, so middle class people had opportunity to buy them in very affordable prices. So is there any similar projects regarding so that the 30-50 crores middle class people of India can afford to have solar panels on their roofs like that?
Yeah, I think it is already there in many state government. I don't know about Maharashtra, but there are many state government have this promoting the rooftop solar, and it has a lot of advantage because most people whom I know have put rooftop solar panels. Their electricity bill is practically nil because the system is they provide the power to the common grid, and whatever they use, that is only charge. But most of the people told me that they have not to pay anything once they have put the solar panels. So different state government may have different schemes, but I think in most states are promoting this. And also there is another thing that the one is we get power and we don't use the fossil fuel power that much less, but also you send back a large amount of radiation back to the space, so which is also helpful to lowering temperature as much as possible. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, sir, I have another subsidiary question, sir. Are we anywhere near about the fundings, international fundings regarding the most historical emitters like Europe and America? Our Prime Minister has urged in the COP26 about the big finance bill. So the developing nations may encourage more for the renewable sources. Are we anywhere near, sir?
See this, as I understood the question correctly, the commitment made by the developed world to provide 100 billions a year, I think they have not provided up till now. And I don't know when they will be providing also. So that clarity doesn't exist. And what exactly the fund is, because many of there are issues that whatever funds or any grant comes to the any developer, they say this is part of that 100 billion. So it is not very clear to me. But in nutshell, I don't think they have been providing funds and technology to address the climate change issues. So I don't think it's a large amount of fund which they have committed. And actually 100 billion is also nothing. It should be 1 trillion or at least 500 billion they should provide, because the kind of benefit they have got by using irresponsibly the energy where they have put entire world at a risk. So they have to provide this funding and technology at a rate which is affordable.
Okay, sir, I have seen, sir, there are by the Prime Minister that he has provided many cylinders for the Ujjwala Yojana. It was very good initiative, but after a few, eventually they have stopped providing the refilling. So
sorry, because
we show any thoughts on that.
Now that, there may be many other issues. What we need to see is whether this scheme may not be 100% successful. There may be some issues, but that is not today's discussion. The question is what we should be doing.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions from the participants?
Sir, I had one question like, sir, how do you see the future of climate change
Praveen, you have given 2 chances.
Yeah.
So keep your questions and
because of the resource person, sir, because he has been since, I mean, tremendous experience in this field, sir. And as we are the young people who are looking forward in this big picture, sir, so his input will be very crucial for us, sir. That's why I am asking, sir. Otherwise, I could keep quiet, sir.
No, you can send me mail, we will have, because there are some other questions, so let other people also get a chance. You can send me a mail, we will interact on this.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yes, yes.
so, like we discussed in the beginning, we have many questions from audience who has sent us earlier. But due to the time constraint, we will not be taking all the questions, but we will go to the selected questions. So we will start with the question from, it's an interesting question from Sabin Matthew Sam from College of Forestry, Trichure, Kerala. So he asked, does going vegan curtail climate change drastically, or is it a mere Western propaganda of the privileged ones?
I don't think so. It's a propaganda only. It's not going to make a drastic change in the vegan and all. I don't think so. Because unless you use less and less energy, that is what is the most important. I don't know, probably when you become vegan and all, maybe the kind of energy use, I didn't see anywhere that it is relatively reduced compared to other. Only study which I know that one is indirectly that the meat or a beef eating is likely to create more issues because it uses large amount of water and all other issues. But whether that will make a dramatic change, I don't think so.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Dr. Shahina Banu, Maharani Cluster University, Bengaluru. So she asks, how to manage negative impact of climate change on the senior citizens?
Yeah, I mean, senior citizens will be much more affected by either a heat or a cold waves or extreme weather or even the large amount of emission. So they will need a special care in all such kind, or even some of the vector-borne diseases like malaria or dengue, or so they will need a special care when such kind of incidents are arising. Definitely, they have to be provided attention that they could be more vulnerable, as we have seen during COVID times. The older population will be definitely more vulnerable to any such stress.
Another question is from Prabhagar Bhatt, Manu Vikasa. He asks, how can I, from a farming community, play a role in climate change mitigation without affecting our farming activities, which are essential for our survival?
Yeah, I mean, there are some of the suggestions which has come. One is try to use, the most important is the water, which is pumped either from the groundwater or from the canal. Try to use minimum, that means sprinklers, and provide water which is minimum required. And there are different technologies popularly known as Israel technology and all, where with the very less amount of water you can get the same production. So water is number one. Second is also the fertilizer. Normally the fertilizer which is used, urea and both, about 14 to 20% is only used. The remaining goes to the groundwater. And many times this is happening because there is not sufficient carbon in the soil, which does not allow it to be holding there. So that is why those who say the organic fertilizers are able to hold the nutrients much longer than the chemical. So, but at the same time, you know, I'm not advocating that don't use the chemical fertilizer. You cannot drastically change. In Sri Lanka, they have done that. They stopped all the imports of chemical fertilizers. And there is a major crisis both for paddy and the tea. And the farmers are in great distress. So we have to slowly transit as far as the fertilizers are concerned. And third is also use the crops which are more climate resilient, which are much stronger, like sorghum or millet, and some of those crops needs very much less water and they are more sturdier, especially like using irrigation for growing paddy in Punjab, where it is not suitable. The soil degrades and they have to put large amount of irrigation because the rainfall is not enough and the groundwater is going down, the soil is going down. So use the traditional crops which were happening in particular region. They are more climate resilient. So we have to use all the different and plus use the information which is available about the agrometeorology, how the weather is going to behave, which will also help you to reduce your water use, your pesticide use, your fertilizer use, and at the same time increase the productivity. So basically we have to use the knowledge which we have about all aspects to increase or to at least maintain the productivity, which will the less consumption of the resource itself will save, help quite a bit to mitigate the climate related issues.
The last question, which is actually made by clubbing so many questions. Many people ask, what is the best way to make people aware about the climate change?
I think it's most difficult question because the issue is each person, each community in different regions of the level of understanding about the climate change, its impacts, and what measures would be quite varying. So we cannot have a uniform kind of a system by which you can make our entire population aware of this. So again, I will come back to the same thing that we need a person or a group of person in a group of villages whose job is to translate the information which is scientific to local people so that they can understand. I think the most important is once there is a routine time, and the best time I have seen that when any extreme event occurs, the people listen to you more carefully. So you have to take advantage of those extreme events and make people aware of what is going to happen. Because normal time, people will say, no, as and when it happens, we will see. So we have to, this is my general experience. So when the extreme event, that is the best time to make people aware of this kind of issues.
So we have so many questions, but as you know, the time constraint is there. So first of all, I thank So there is a question from Professor Dinesh Srivastava. Sir, please.
So I have a very simple question. We know that even if we completely obey and convert to change over to completely renewable energy and do all those things, we alone cannot stop the climate change. The whole world has to, all the nations of the world have to do it. What can we do to make it possible?
That is true. What you say is true. But there is a very famous story, about Akbar and Birbal. I hope you may be knowing that once Akbar said that, I want to fill my swimming pool with the milk, and all citizens have to put one glass of milk into swimming pool. And Birbal said it won't happen. So Akbar said I could do it. I will order every citizen. So, and during night it has to be done, so that morning he can take a bath in. So what happened when morning Akbar came and saw the swimming pool was full of water. Then he asked Birbal, why is it so? He said, everybody thought that my one glass of water doesn't make, let other put all milk. So everybody thought the same way, so everybody put a water only. So in this also it's like that. I don't think we need to worry, and India is doing pretty well that what we need to do, let us do it. And then also at the same time, force others to do the same. But first we should do what we think is right and do not worry what others are doing as of now. So that is the only way we would be able to address this issue. If we think that if once he will do, then only I will do, then nothing will happen. I think that answers your question.
At least we can set an example.
So let's, every good thing also has to have an end. So we know that this is a very important topic, and the discussion will be continuing after this discussion also. So first of all, I thank our director, Prof. Shailesh Nayak, for finding time in his busy schedule and to come here and patiently answer all the questions. So thank you, sir. Thank you very much. So then all of you who sent us the questions, who came here and asked the questions and actively participated in the discussion, thank you very much. And we will be coming with another topic like this soon. Until then, bye. Thank you.